The Roman Colosseum. Thousands and thousands of tourists from all over the world come here every day, in winter and summer, in any weather, just to look at this wonder of the world. But unfortunately, most are only interested in how to tick a box, take a photo, and no one thinks about who actually built the Colosseum, what technologies were used, and who rebuilt it later. How did it happen? In general, I suggest you to take a detailed look at the structure of the Colosseum, and we'll find out what it was originally made for, who actually built it, and what unbelievable technologies were used in its construction. Also, we will see how it was destroyed. Then, who restored it and rebuilt it, and why it has reached us in the form in which we see it today. We will examine the Colosseum from the outside and go down to the basement. We will walk along the top, look from all possible angles, and delve into history to find the truth. And the first point I would like to touch upon is something that unfortunately few people notice. When you come to Rome, come closer to the Colosseum. If you look closely, you can see that the lower arches are made very, very well. Of course, they have already been partially restored. And we will see this too. But take a closer look at the quality of the masonry of this arch and look up at this upper canopy, which was officially completed just 2 years after the opening of the Colosseum. We can see that the masonry is completely different. That is, if we learn the official history, it is as if the buildings completely forgot how to build in just 2 years. They forgot how it's done, how the stones are cut, how they are joined, although the builders in theory should have been the same, because nothing cardinal has happened in these 2 years. And the only thing that happened is that Emperor Titus, who was finishing the construction of the Colosseum, died, and his brother Vespasian took his throne, who had completed the upper tier. And the upper tier not only is not so beautifully made and not so well made, it was also built with mortar and without embedded parts. Because we can see, if you walk around the Colosseum, that in the lower part, exactly in the lower 3 arches, people were mining metal everywhere, because metal was very valuable. Literally, the entire Colosseum is riddled with these holes. Only at the beginning of the Colosseum, on that side, the popes asked not to plunder its facade too much, so there are fewer holes there. Here we see the upper part. Before the restoration, it even had a different color. That is, it was not covered with such a layer of soot and carbon as the lower tiles, and therefore it was built much, much later. And of course, there are no traces of metal mining there. And in general, if you come closer and look up, you can see a not very pretty picture. From here you can see how crookedly the upper tiles is made. Here the columns are perfect, and there hackwork, and it's partially fallen apart. But why did such a masonry from there, and where did they get this stone from? If you carefully study the base of the Colosseum, its base is huge blocks. About 12 tons was the largest block that I saw. These huge blocks of travertine were placed without mortar, but using iron embedded parts. Since these are arches and for seismic resistance, they fastened all the stones with metal elements. So here is a 3D animation that can be found on the internet. If we look at the detailed 3D structure of the Colosseum, we can see that this destruction is mainly coming from the south side. Let me remind you of the structure of the Colosseum. These are three arch rows, limiting the Colosseum along the perimeter. From them to the center are built powerful walls, on which the stands were later installed. So these powerful walls and arches are made of travertine. But we see that on the southern side, two external arches are simply knocked out or demolished. Officially, they were destroyed by an earthquake. But excuse me, it's hard to believe in an earthquake because such a cylindrical structure, and in this case oval, it's highly resistant to any kind of impact. And in general, the cylindrical shape is the most stable of all possible shapes. And here, in addition, the stones are also fastened with metal, and such strength was laid there that no earthquake would have destroyed it. And we see in the third row outside, on the southern side, here is a huge hole. About 7 arches were demolished together with the walls inside. And later it was rebuilt as it is now. This brickwork was laid only in the 19th century. Also, the ends of the surviving arch rows were reinforced with bricks in the 19th century. It's all practically new, but why actually did it fall apart? Let's remember the wall of the gods from myth. Namely, the gods built everything but using this technology, mortarless, gapless, and with ideal joints or blocks. Everywhere in the Colosseum, where the walls are made of travertine, we can see simply perfect joints. There are no traces of processing, which is the most interesting thing. Therefore, the version that the Colosseum was destroyed as a result of the war of the gods is also confirmed by the fact that almost all the buildings built using this technology in Greece and Egypt were destroyed, and they were destroyed apparently as a result of this war, which is reflected in the myths of different nations. So, what was it? Some kind of projectile or something like that. We don't know what kind of weapon they had, but something flew in. And it was probably from the north side, at an angle not touching the south side. Just like that. It exploded at the beginning of this third of the arch, and the blast wave blew away the other two arches, which collapsed in a chain reaction. But in the places where there was a weakening, and that was on the eastern and western sides, the chain of arches broke. After all, it's not a circle but an oval, and the heaps of material remained lying there for an unknown amount of time. And later, if we look at this very top tier, which in theory was officially built 2 years after the opening of the Colosseum, we can see that there are both elements of columns and elements of various kinds of decorations that were above the arches. All these blocks were obviously simply taken from the pile of stones that remained after the explosion and used for the completion of the construction. Why exactly is that? Why didn't the Romans restore the southern side? Let's look at it logically. For example, we came to this stadium, we see this destruction, and we need to increase the number of spectator seats. What are we going to do? We will spend incredible resources to try to restore these two huge rows of arches on the southern side at the time when a lot of the stones has already been destroyed, and putting everything back the same way as it was will be incredibly difficult. And it will be necessary to additionally look for a stone somewhere, additionally cut it out somehow. And what are the Romans doing? They are taking the easiest path. They already have a ready-made north side, and they are simply building it up a little and getting a significant increase of spectator seats with the most minimal cost. This logic of man has always been like this, to do something with the most minimal expenses, and this logic remains with us. We always take it as a basis. That is why we see that on the other side, where the stones are not covered with bricks, these pieces of columns and blocks are put somehow on mortar. This is how, in essence, the Colosseum was completed by the Romans. And here we find the answer to another question. Why did the Colosseum burn so often in history? Because the southern side, which was destroyed, Romans was not able to restore at all. They probably just restored it all with some boards. They also made a wooden flooring on the arena, and of course it burned quite often. And this is reflected in the subsequent history of the Colosseum. And if everything here was made of stone, then in fact what would burn there? And apparently the experienced Romans later repaired the Colosseum and installed everything from bricks using the so-called Roman concrete. Well, and put these marble seats on the bricks. Here is where part of the stands remained. Quite primitive, of course, and to say that this was planned from the beginning, it's just ridiculous. Well, the remaining material that wasn't used for this upper tier, people simply stole. Many places in Rome itself have some remains of these stones built into the facades of buildings. If you walk through the streets of Rome, you can find a whole lot of them. In general, everyone who could tried to steal this piece of Colosseum. Because the Colosseum was built so incredibly. It used technologies that a person couldn't replicate. It had incredible ceilings. We saw elements of these ceilings in the open air museum located near the Colosseum. It was something incredible. The elements were made as if in a factory. Everything was so well designed that apparently they were fastened together quite simply. And that is why, if you go to the Colosseum, you won't find a single preserved ceiling. All these inter-arch ceilings that unite the arch inside were later made, apparently by man. And this is the end of the first part of the film. Thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel to see new discoveries.